Welcome back to another video, everybody. I'm hoping that the quarantine's going okay for all of you. Today, I'm going to actually be looking at set 5 of the um, project, which is values. So I'm going to open mine up, and it's just loading right now. All right, so I'm going to zoom out a little bit so we can look at all the different ones. So in this project, for value, there's depth, contrast, rhythm, and weight. So these are the 4 I did. Obviously, some of them you might have to look up just to be safe. These are just mine. So like I said, this is a tutoring process. You always want to reach out to Jason to make sure that this is 100% accurate. This is just me helping you guys out, kind of like if we were in the classroom together and we were sitting right next to each other and you needed a little bit of help. So for my first one, I did a sphere, because nothing says depth more than a ball and some sort of depth to it. But because it had to stay non-objective, I kind of leave it like what kind of ball, what kind of sphere. So what I used is all these multiple versions of gray, and then I used the black circle to kind of give that flatness some depth. And then I use the same circle, but I made it white so that it kind of gives it this reflective quality. And I use the triangles to make it look like a shadow, which is really cool. I had a lot of fun with this one. I'm hoping Jason really likes it. This one took probably about 2 or 3 hours just manipulating the shapes. I was trying to curve the circle for the reflection, but it's still a learning. I'm still learning just as much as you guys are. I am a Photoshop guy through and through. All I've ever used Illustrator for is to put word bubbles in comics. So I know how to put a text and a bubble and plop it on the picture. So kind of messing around with all these tools is still new to me. So that's the ball. See here, and it says right on here, instructions: creatively demonstrate the principles using the given elements. So even though I said it's a sphere, it can be anything. It's non-objective. I didn't make a cute picture, and I just used the values that were given. Now, this one, for contrast, I was kind of going for what will make the picture kind of pop out, because contrast is all about dark to light. So I gave it this really cool aesthetic here. I was thinking of like 1950s TV and not having color, and the TV when a show would go off the air, but then give it that illusion like things are popping out at you. So even though it's contrast, there's still some weight to it, and depth. So that's one of the things about this project that I noticed is some of these properties can overlap as long as what you put in the set matches what the value subject is. So like with contrast, I think I hit the contrast pretty well here. What I did here is I copied and pasted the triangle multiple times, and then I just changed the color over on the right hand side. So if I click here where it says appearance, you can click on that. Use all the tools to your disposal. I noticed that up here at the top you have transform, And when you click on transform, you can reflect it. You can do all these sort of to manipulate the shape. Use those to your advantage and learn the shortcut keys. Um, some of these would have taken me 3-4 hours, and I was able to shave that down by using the shortcut keys. Control V is pasting. Control C is copy. If you have a Mac, it's Command. So instead of Control, use Command. If you want to just switch back to your pointer, just click on V. V will switch it back to the little arrow. If you hit H, it's the little hand tool, so you can move it around. And then the I on your keyboard gives you the eyedropper. So if you're clicking on something and then you hit I, it's going to change it to the eyedropper, and then you can click on that color. So I'm going to go back to the original color, and then if I click V, boom, it's back to the arrow. Those little shortcuts, they might not seem like a lot, but they do help in the long run, especially with time and not having to go up to the menu to look up, oh, okay, I want to transform. And all these transformations have shortcuts, except these because it's going to take you to a menu. But if you hit move, so if you do Shift Control M, you can move it. Arranging, bring it to the front. This helped me a ton because I didn't know these had shortcuts, and I was constantly going back up to the menu. But then I saw their shortcuts. If you need a cheat sheet, what I would do is whatever shortcuts are helping you the most, write them down and then stick them somewhere near your computer so that you know what the shortcuts are. If you kind of want to cover up your webcam because you're worried about the NSA or whatever, you can put it above your webcam with a little piece of tape. Anywhere on your computer. I mean, if you're using a laptop, it's a little harder because on a laptop, there's not a lot of room, especially nowadays. Computers have such a thin rim, so it's kind of hard to stick stuff to it. But if you have a wall, even your sketchbook, you could just write it down. Those shortcuts are going to help you even further down your career. In Photoshop, I use shortcuts like no tomorrow. Even if I'm using my drawing tablet, I'm constantly have the keyboard near me, so that way, Control Z is undo, Control Shift Z is redo. So you're gonna redo what you just did. So if you go up here to undo and redo, Control Shift Z. So Shift is always gonna kind of be like the opposite of what you're doing, and so that was contrast. Now, this is one of my personal favorites, and out of all the sets that we've done, this is the one that I feel has hit the mark the most. This is rhythm. So, if you look up on Google or in the notes that Jason put in the folder for you, there's a ton of visualizations. Man, I'm having a tough day today. It's all the coffee. There's a visualize aids, better word, of what rhythm is. But if you think about rhythm, you just think of things flowing. I tried to put the shapes and kind of manipulate them, but like I said before, I had trouble with that with the sphere. But what I wanted to do was incorporate every shape. So I made this nifty little kind of like a pattern here where it's the triangle and circle, and they're kind of rhythmically going in different orders, and they're all different sizes. So it almost looks like they're flowing towards the viewer and then back down, and it gives you that illusion of a wave. And then I put these bigger triangles in the back to kind of make the composition flow together. And that's one thing. I know we don't have the critiques anymore in person, but when you're talking to someone about your artwork, you want to have your terminology down, because it's just going to make it a lot simpler for another artist to understand, and it's going to show people that are not artists that you know what you're talking about. Another thing you could do with this is, I didn't kind of mess with the stroke here, but you could add a stroke and kind of change the size of things. And you see here, I'm just manipulating the different colors. And, well, that one is kind of the same color, but let's go with a little lighter. And you see, you can change the aspect of it. So that's another cool thing you can do with fills and stuff like that. Now this one, set 5 value weight. It's kind of a vague term, but in comic books, line weight kind of talks about the width of the line. So with this one, even though the shapes were solid, I made sure to use the stroke tool. So the stroke is going to give you what line each one is. So for example, this triangle back here, I made the stroke at 1 point black. And that line weight is different from this triangle here. It's fragmented because I did half a triangle and then I reflected it to do this one in the back. And that's the thing, when you do too much, it kind of shows, because then you're clicking on something and it clicks something else. But this is where moving stuff back and forth is going to be key. But here I took out the fill color and just left the line weight just to show weight. And also the weight of the triangles is the most dominant feature of the picture. So the triangles are the first thing that stand up to you, and it draws your eye to it. Now when it draws your eye to it, now all the other lines are going to be noticeable. And they're all different values, so you're still hitting your value and your weight at the same time. You can attack this whichever way you want. This is just my representation of it. And you can keep playing around with it. I noticed that whenever, especially right before I sent the set 5, or I haven't set 5 yet. I believe set 4 was the last one we sent in, but set 5 I have it ready to go. But I'm always gonna look it over before I send it to Jason, and I'm gonna be like, okay, maybe I could change this. Maybe I can move the triangle over there and kind of crop it. I did notice that I had a little bit of an issue with cropping. One thing I did notice that helped the most with cropping was if you go here to the eraser tool and switch to scissor, you can actually hit the location that you're trying to cut. You're going to click on it and then click on that side, and then let go of the cursor, hit your arrow tool, and then you hit delete, and it should cleanly cut it. Now, those clean cuts are going to be instrumental in making the picture cohesive, because if you have pieces sticking out, unless that's what you're going for, it's just going to make the piece look unfinished. Even if you zoom out here, I'm just going to zoom out. Even with all these down here, I'll move this out of the way. You can still tell that each picture is by itself. They're all one composition. So each one is its own composition, even though they are all a part of the same set. And set 5, I was the most excited for, because when you can mess with depth, I feel like there's a lot more freedom. It is a lot more challenging. This set probably took me the longest out of all of them. This one in set 2 I had the biggest problem with. But set 5 value, I think if you really spend the time and you really kind of get in there and try everything that your mind can come up with, this set right here is also going to help you out with your set portrait, especially when you get to the monochromatic and all those other subjects that you have to hit for the color version of the portrait. I have trouble seeing certain colors, so when having this color palette is really great, because you can kind of switch the chroma keys over here, and it's really important too to learn the number value to the colors, especially if you're down the line, if you work with CMYK and RGB. Those things are going to be really important to your future as an artist commercially, or even just for your own fun, especially if you're gonna dive into digital. Because even though Photoshop is different from Adobe Illustrator, colors don't change. The color numbers are always the same. So one color in Photoshop, as long as the number's correct, it'll be the same color in Adobe Illustrator and any other art program. So if you use GIMP, if you use ArtSci, any of those programs, the color code is going to be the same. And that's important because especially if you blend colors digitally, I'm still new to the digital game. It's still a learning process for me as well, but I just wanted to throw this video out there to help any of you guys struggling with this. And always remember the rules. So I'll reiterate. Creatively demonstrate the principles given. Element, don't be literal, cliche, or cute. Don't make pictures. And use values, gray, black, and white. But be as creative as possible. I noticed that the examples that Jason gives us in class, it's a lot of people really go out of the box and make some really great pictures using the tools given. Another thing too is Command S and Control S for Mac and PC respectively. Those are going to be your saves. I would recommend if you do 3 or 4 changes while you got your hand on the key, Control S. It's not going to hurt to save it, and you won't run into issues. Another thing is if you like a certain aspect of the picture, but you want to try something new, I would always suggest creating a copy. So that way you can go back to your original if you kind of tweak something and you don't like it. Having backups is never a bad thing. And emailing them to yourself, because you never know if your computer's going to crash or whatnot. So I hope you guys enjoyed this quick kind of run through of set 5. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments down below or email me through the student email. I don't want to give that out because this is going to be on YouTube, but hopefully we can get through this together, and you guys have. I'll see you guys again in Graphic Design 1 or Illustration 1 this fall. So thank you so much for watching, and as always, keep it over 9,000, guys. Take care.